When Captain Maya Jefferson was told to wait outside, while white colleagues walked freely through the crew entrance, she didn't just fight for her right to fly. She soared beyond the barriers and changed an entire industry's course forever. Captain Maya Jefferson arrives at Pinnacle Airline's crew entrance, her uniform crisp and her confidence unwavering. At 38, she's been flying commercial jets for 12 years, recently promoted to senior captain after an exemplary record. As she reaches for her ID badge to swipe into the crew area, a staff member steps in front of her with a dismissive glance. "The passenger entrance is that way, miss," the staff member says, not bothering to look at Maya's uniform or the captain's bars clearly visible on her shoulders. Maya takes a deep breath, maintaining her professionalism. "I'm Captain Jefferson. I'm flying Pinnacle 247 to Chicago this morning," she explains, holding up her credentials. The staff member's expression shifts to thinly veiled skepticism. He examines her ID badge with unusual scrutiny, glancing between the photo and her face multiple times. "There must be some mistake. Let me check the roster." While conducting this unnecessary verification, Maya notices her white male co-pilot arriving. He nods to the same staff member, who waves him through without checking his credentials. The disparity isn't lost on Maya, who has experienced similar treatment throughout her career. "Why don't you wait outside while I sort this out?" "The crew lounge is for confirmed flight crew only," the staff member finally says, gesturing toward the exit. Maya stands her ground, her voice steady but firm. "I'm the assigned captain for Flight 247. You can verify that with operations or my co-pilot who just walked in. I won't be waiting outside." The staff member, now flustered, calls over a supervisor. By this point, several other crew members have gathered, watching the scene unfold. The supervisor, recognizing Maya immediately, apologizes profusely. "Captain Jefferson, I'm so sorry for the confusion. Please, go right in." In the crew lounge, Maya's co-pilot, First Officer Brian Miller, approaches her. "Everything okay? I saw what happened out there." Maya nods, her mind already racing ahead. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of similar experiences. As she prepares for the flight, she makes a decision that will change not just her career, but potentially the entire airline industry. "I'm done letting this slide," she tells Brian quietly. "This isn't about me anymore. It's about every pilot who doesn't fit someone's narrow image of what a captain should look like." Throughout the 3-hour flight to Chicago, Maya performs her duties flawlessly, as always. But her mind is elsewhere, formulating a plan. During their descent, she asks Brian a question. "How many incidents of discrimination have you witnessed at Pinnacle? Not just against me, but anyone?" Brian hesitates, then sighs. "More than I can count, and probably more that I didn't even notice." Maya nods. "I've been documenting everything for years. Screenshots, recordings, witness statements. But I've been afraid to use them because I love flying so much." She stares out at the Chicago skyline appearing through the clouds. "Not anymore. Sometimes you have to be willing to risk everything to change anything." After checking into her hotel, Maya makes a series of phone calls, first to her lawyer, then to several colleagues across the airline industry. By midnight, she has compiled a comprehensive dossier of discriminatory incidents at Pinnacle Airlines spanning the past decade. The evidence is overwhelming. Pay disparities, denied promotions, inappropriate comments, and systemic barriers for pilots of color and women. Maya had methodically saved every email, recorded legally permissible conversations, and collected statements from colleagues who experienced similar treatment. She also reaches out to a trusted journalist at the Aviation Industry Review, who has been covering diversity issues in the industry for years. "I'm ready to go on record," Maya tells her. "But first, I'm giving Pinnacle one chance to make this right." The next morning, Maya drafts a detailed email to Pinnacle's CEO, CUO, and the entire board of directors. She outlines the systemic discrimination she's documented and attaches supporting evidence. Not just her personal experiences, but patterns affecting dozens of employees. Her demands are clear: an independent investigation, transparent reporting of diversity metrics, mandatory training for all staff, and structural changes to promotion processes. She gives them 24 hours to respond. The confrontation between Captain Maya Jefferson and Pinnacle Airlines leadership is the pivotal moment where years of systemic discrimination are laid bare, and the power dynamics within the company are irrevocably shifted. This scene is not just a meeting, it's a reckoning, where Maya's meticulous preparation, unshakable resolve, and strategic leverage force the company's highest executives to face the consequences of their institutional biases. Maya deliberately chooses a neutral location, a downtown Chicago hotel conference room, rather than Pinnacle's corporate offices. This decision is psychological as much as practical. By refusing to meet on the company's turf, she removes any subconscious advantage the executives might have in their own domain. She also ensures that the environment is one where she maintains control, with her lawyer present and 2 supportive colleagues who have faced similar discrimination. The setting signals that this is not a routine HR complaint, but a high-stakes negotiation where Maya holds the leverage. When CEO Richard Harmon begins the meeting by downplaying the incident as an isolated misunderstanding, he follows a well-worn corporate playbook, minimizing the issue to avoid accountability. His tone is measured, almost paternalistic, suggesting that Maya may have overreacted. This tactic is common in discrimination cases, where those in power reframe systemic problems as individual misunderstandings to avoid structural change. Harmon's opening gambit reveals his initial assumption, that Maya can be placated with vague assurances rather than concrete action. Maya doesn't engage in emotional appeals. Instead, she responds with cold, hard facts, sliding a thick folder across the table. This folder represents years of documentation, pay disparities, promotion denials, recorded conversations, and witness statements from colleagues. Her methodical presentation is devastatingly effective because it removes any room for debate. She isn't sharing anecdotes. She's presenting data that proves discrimination is embedded in Pinnacle's operations. Harmon's eventual response, "We had no idea this was so widespread," is both revealing and damning. It exposes willful ignorance, a common corporate failing where leadership turns a blind eye to systemic issues unless forced to confront them. Maya's retort, "You chose not to see it," cuts to the heart of the problem. Companies often avoid investigating discrimination because acknowledging it would require costly, disruptive change. Her words force Harmon to recognize that his negligence is itself a form of complicity. One of the most tense moments comes when a company attorney tries to intimidate Maya's lawyer with a veiled threat. No airline wants a whistleblower. This is a classic corporate tactic, using fear of blacklisting to silence dissent. But Maya's response is fearless. "If speaking the truth ends my career, then it's not a career worth having." This moment marks the complete shift in power dynamics. The executives realize Maya isn't bluffing. She's willing to burn her own career to force change. That level of conviction is something they can't manipulate or negotiate away. Her willingness to walk away from aviation altogether removes their last leverage over her. Maya's confrontation mirrors high-profile discrimination cases like those at Tesla, Google, and Boeing, where employees have used internal data to expose systemic inequities. Her strategy, going straight to the CEO with overwhelming evidence, is reminiscent of whistleblowers like Susan Fowler, Uber, or Timnit Gebru, Google AI, whose disclosures forced industry-wide reckonings. By the end of the meeting, Pinnacle's leadership knows they have no choice but to comply. Maya has backed them into a corner with legal, financial, and reputational stakes too high to ignore. The confrontation isn't just about one pilot's experience. It's about forcing an entire institution to change. And as Maya walks out, she knows the battle isn't over. But the first major victory is within reach. The ultimatum is the moment where Captain Maya Jefferson transforms from a lone whistleblower into an unstoppable force for systemic change. This scene is a high-stakes negotiation where Maya, armed with irrefutable evidence and unwavering conviction, presents Pinnacle Airlines leadership with a clear choice: reform immediately or face public, legal, and financial ruin. The power dynamics in the room have completely shifted. No longer is Maya pleading for fairness. She is dictating the terms of justice. After Maya's devastating presentation of evidence, CEO Richard Harmon tries to buy time. His response: "Some of these changes will take time." It's a classic corporate deflection tactic. Companies facing discrimination allegations often promise internal reviews or future initiatives to placate critics while avoiding immediate accountability. Harmon's hesitation reveals his priorities. He wants to minimize disruption to Pinnacle's operations, not necessarily to correct the injustice. But Maya cuts through the evasion with a razor-sharp rebuttal. "You've had time. Decades of it. What you haven't had is motivation. Now you do." Her words strip away any pretense of goodwill, exposing the truth. Pinnacle's leadership has always known about these issues, but chose inaction because there were no consequences. Now, Maya is the consequence. As the meeting concludes, one of Pinnacle's attorneys pulls Maya's lawyer aside and delivers a veiled warning. "You know, if she goes public with this, her career in aviation could be over. No airline wants a whistleblower." This is a calculated move, designed to exploit Maya's love for flying and fear of professional exile. The attorney is banking on the industry's unspoken rule: those who challenge the system are blacklisted. Maya, overhearing the remark, doesn't flinch. Her response: "If speaking the truth ends my career, then it's not a career worth having," shatters the illusion that she can be intimidated. By declaring her willingness to walk away, she removes the company's last leverage over her. This moment is crucial because it reveals Maya's moral clarity. She values justice more than her own position within the industry. Each demand is designed to force measurable change, not just performative gestures. Unlike vague corporate pledges to do better, Maya's terms are enforceable and verifiable. Maya isn't just fighting for herself, she's setting a precedent. She knows that if Pinnacle caves, other airlines will be forced to examine their own practices to avoid similar exposure. Her lawyer's warning about being blacklisted underscores the aviation industry's culture of silence. But Maya's defiance cracks that foundation. Her statement, "I suspect I'm not the only one who believes the industry needs to change," hints at the coming avalanche. She's aware that once one person speaks out, others will follow. This is how movements begin. The response from Pinnacle Airlines marks the moment when corporate resistance crumbles under the weight of undeniable truth and impending consequences. This is not just a capitulation to Maya's demands, but a seismic shift in how the company, and by extension the industry, must confront systemic discrimination. The scene unfolds with calculated precision, revealing the interplay between corporate self-preservation and genuine accountability. Early the next morning, mere minutes before her deadline, Maya receives the email that changes everything. The board of directors, after what must have been a frantic night of emergency meetings, has unanimously approved her demands. The language is formal, the tone conciliatory, but the subtext is clear. They fear what will happen if they refuse. The response includes a detailed timeline for implementation, suggesting they've already begun scrambling to address the issues she exposed. Accompanying this is a company-wide statement from CEO Richard Harmon, a carefully crafted message acknowledging systemic failures and committing to measurable change. But Maya is no stranger to corporate doublespeak. She recognizes that words on paper mean nothing without action. The speed of their response proves how terrified they are of the alternative: public scandal, regulatory scrutiny, and financial fallout. Their sudden willingness to comply isn't born of moral awakening, but of cold, hard risk assessment. They've calculated that the cost of ignoring her is far greater than the cost of reform. Yet Maya knows that true change requires more than private assurances. If she lets this remain an internal matter, Pinnacle could quietly backslide once the immediate threat passes. So she makes a strategic decision. She releases a portion of her evidence to the Aviation Industry Review, along with Pinnacle's written commitment to reform. This move is deliberate. It forces the company's hand by making their promises public. The resulting headline: Pinnacle Airlines confronts discrimination after black female captain forces reckoning, does exactly what she intended. It ignites a firestorm. The media explosion is instantaneous. Within hours, the story spreads from industry publications to mainstream news, then to social media, where it goes viral. The public reaction is visceral: outrage from passengers, scrutiny from investors, and, most importantly, solidarity from other airline employees who begin sharing their own stories. What started as one pilot's stand becomes an industry-wide uprising. Reporters dig deeper, uncovering similar patterns at other carriers. The FAA, sensing the shifting winds, announces an investigation into discriminatory practices across commercial aviation. Pinnacle's leadership, now under a microscope, has no choice but to accelerate their reforms. The transparency Maya demanded is no longer optional. It's a survival tactic. Shareholders demand answers. Competitors scramble to announce their own diversity initiatives preemptively. The entire industry is forced to reckon with what Maya has known all along. Discrimination isn't just a few bad actors. It's embedded in the system. Maya watches all of this unfold with quiet resolve. She never wanted to be a crusader, but she understands the power of this moment. By forcing Pinnacle's hand and then ensuring the world was watching, she's turned a private negotiation into a public mandate for change. The response from the company was just the first step. The real victory lies in the ripple effects now spreading far beyond the walls of Pinnacle Airlines. Yet even now, she remains wary. Corporate history is littered with hollow pledges and performative gestures. The true test will come in the months ahead, when the spotlight fades and the hard work of lasting reform begins. But for now, the response, both from Pinnacle and the wider world, proves something revolutionary: that even the most entrenched systems can be forced to bend when confronted with unshakable truth and unyielding courage. The shockwaves from Maya's confrontation with Pinnacle Airlines radiate far beyond a single corporation, triggering a seismic shift across the entire aviation industry. What began as one pilot's stand against discrimination evolves into a full-scale reckoning for commercial aviation, exposing systemic biases that had been quietly tolerated for decades. The impact is both immediate and far-reaching, transforming Maya from a reluctant whistleblower into an accidental revolutionary whose actions rewrite the rules of an entire sector. In the days following the explosive media coverage, the aviation world finds itself at a crossroads. Other airlines, witnessing Pinnacle's public humiliation and the FAA's swift announcement of an industry-wide investigation, scrambled to get ahead of the controversy. Major carriers that once dismissed diversity as a secondary concern suddenly prioritize it as a matter of corporate survival. Press releases touting new inclusion initiatives flood inboxes, while internal memos mandate urgent reviews of hiring and promotion practices. The speed of this collective about-face reveals an uncomfortable truth. The problems were always known, but the will to address them was absent until the financial and reputational costs became too high to ignore. For Maya, the sudden spotlight is overwhelming. Media requests pour in from major networks, business publications, and civil rights organizations. At first, she hesitates. Her instinct is to return to the cockpit, not become a public figure. But as she hears from countless other pilots and airline employees sharing their own stories of discrimination, she recognizes the power her platform holds. When prominent civil rights leaders reach out, urging her to lend her voice to the broader movement, she makes a conscious decision to step beyond her comfort zone. Her interviews are measured yet powerful, avoiding personal bitterness while maintaining an unshakable focus on systemic change. She becomes a symbol, but deliberately frames the narrative around policy rather than personality, understanding that real transformation requires structural reform, not just inspirational anecdotes. The FAA's investigation acts as a sword of Damocles hanging over the industry. Subpoenas are issued, data is audited, and executives who once boasted about their company's meritocracies now struggle to explain damning statistics. The agency's involvement shifts the conversation from voluntary corporate social responsibility to enforceable compliance. Airlines that previously dismissed diversity as a PR issue now face the very real prospect of regulatory sanctions, creating a financial imperative for change that moral arguments alone had failed to establish. Within Pinnacle, the transformations are most dramatic. The creation of a Chief Inclusion Officer position, and the offer to Maya, represents both genuine reform and a calculated attempt to rehabilitate the company's image. Her polite but firm refusal to take the role, "My job is flying planes," sends another powerful message, that substantive change must be woven into existing power structures rather than siloed into symbolic positions. Her counteroffer to serve on the advisory board demonstrates strategic wisdom. She maintains influence without being co-opted, ensuring the reforms she fought for aren't diluted after the media frenzy subsides. Perhaps most significantly, Maya's actions create space for others to come forward. A tidal wave of testimonials emerges from pilots, flight attendants, and ground crew across multiple airlines. Stories that had been suppressed for years suddenly find oxygen. Social media becomes a tool for collective empowerment as the hashtag not just Pinnacle trends, revealing that the issues Maya exposed were industry standard. This grassroots uprising pressures airlines to act faster and more aggressively than any corporate policy ever could. The business implications become impossible to ignore. Institutional investors, fearing consumer backlash and regulatory risk, begin factoring diversity metrics into their valuations. Corporate clients review their travel contracts with airlines lacking demonstrable progress. The market, that supposedly neutral arbiter so often used to justify the status quo, suddenly starts rewarding those carriers that can prove meaningful change. By the time Maya stands at the National Aviation Conference a year later, the landscape has fundamentally altered. The standing ovation she receives isn't just for her courage. It's acknowledgement that she forced an entire industry to evolve. The slides showing Pinnacle's improved diversity metrics represent more than statistics. They're proof that systemic bias, once considered an intractable reality of aviation culture, can be dismantled when met with irrefutable evidence and unrelenting resolve. Yet in quieter moments, Maya reflects on how much further there is to go. Real cultural change moves slower than press releases and policy updates. But the foundation has been laid, not just at Pinnacle, but across aviation. The most enduring impact of her stand may be invisible. The young girls who see her story and now believe the cockpit is theirs to claim, the executives who think twice before dismissing a complaint, the industry that can no longer plead ignorance about its own inequities. Maya Jefferson didn't just change a company policy. She altered the gravitational pull of an entire profession, ensuring that those who follow her will face fewer headwinds than she endured. The industry will never be the same, and that is exactly as it should be. The final act of Maya Jefferson's journey represents not just personal vindication, but the crystallization of systemic change, where temporary concessions harden into permanent transformation. 1 year after her explosive confrontation with Pinnacle Airlines, what was once unthinkable has become undeniable. The aviation industry has been irrevocably altered, and Maya's quiet return to the cockpit symbolizes both victory and the new normal she fought to create. The National Aviation Conference serves as the perfect stage to measure how far everything has shifted. When Maya steps onto the podium, the audience of industry leaders, many of whom had initially dismissed her as a troublemaker, now rises in unanimous respect. The slides behind her tell a story in data. Promotion rates for women and pilots of color have increased by 40%. Pay disparities have narrowed to single-digit percentages, and retention rates for minority employees have reached record highs. These aren't vague promises or performative gestures, but quantifiable results audited by third parties. The most telling statistic isn't on any slide. 12 other major airlines have adopted versions of Pinnacle's reform model, creating an industry standard where none existed before. Yet Maya's speech avoids triumphant rhetoric. Instead, she frames this progress as merely the first phase of a longer journey. What happened at Pinnacle wasn't unique, she reminds the crowd. What was unique was choosing accountability over excuses. This deliberate reframing serves a crucial purpose. It prevents complacency while acknowledging that cultural change moves slower than policy changes. Her challenge to the room: will you wait until you're forced to change, or will you lead the way? Establishes a new benchmark for corporate responsibility in aviation. The conference reveals another subtle but profound shift. The language of inclusion has moved from HR departments to boardrooms. Where diversity was once relegated to optional training modules, it's now discussed alongside fuel efficiency and safety protocols as a core operational priority. Several airline CEOs approached Maya afterward, not for photo ops, but for concrete advice on restructuring their pilot development programs. This transition from tokenism to operational integration marks the difference between superficial change and lasting transformation. Pinnacle's offer for Maya to become Chief Inclusion Officer, and her graceful decline, speaks volumes about where real power lies. By choosing to remain a pilot while serving on the advisory board, she models a crucial lesson: that systemic change shouldn't require leaving the profession you love. Her presence in the cockpit, week after week, becomes living proof that the industry can accommodate those it once excluded. This symbolic power is amplified every time a young black girl spots Maya's 4 stripes at an airport gate, realizing that the captain's chair isn't reserved for others anymore. The full circle moment when Maya returns to Pinnacle's crew entrance, greeted with genuine respect by the same staff member who once barred her way, carries layers of meaning. His "Good evening, Captain Jefferson" isn't just politeness, it's evidence of rewired institutional behavior. The fact that this interaction goes unremarked upon by other crew members demonstrates how deeply new norms have taken root. Discrimination hasn't been eradicated, but its casual expression is no longer tolerated. Perhaps the most significant transformation isn't in corporate policies or diversity metrics, but in the collective psychology of the industry's marginalized employees. The flood of messages Maya receives from first-generation pilots, female mechanics, and LGBTQ+ flight attendants all carry the same quiet revelation: because you spoke up, I realized I didn't have to accept it either. This erosion of internalized oppression may be immeasurable by any HR dashboard, but it's the foundation upon which all other changes rest. As Maya settles into the flight deck for her next journey, the weight of the past year settles into perspective. The legal victories and policy changes matter, but the true transformation lives in the small moments. The confident demeanor of a newly promoted black first officer who would have quit a year ago. The HR director who now automatically questions promotion shortlists lacking diversity. The passengers who double-take when they see her uniform, not with skepticism, but with dawning recognition that the face of authority can look like hers. The industry will continue evolving imperfectly, but the inertia has been shattered. Maya's legacy isn't just in what she changed, but in what she made unchangeable. The expectation that equality isn't a concession to be negotiated, but a baseline standard no credible airline can ignore. And as her aircraft accelerates down the runway, the parallel is unmistakable. Once something achieves liftoff, it becomes infinitely harder to force back to ground.